I would like to welcome everybody today. We are very thankful that you have taken the time to come and learn how DOT is going to be changing this month. Just a little background on Dr. Estep. He is our only occupationally trained physician in the area. He actually has done a residency in occupational health. So I would like for you to welcome Dr. Estep, and he will kind of walk us through what is coming this month.
Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoyed lunch. Yeah. But the biggest thing that we're going to talk about is changes that are about to come upon us. And, part of that is going to be trying to understand possibly what the government was thinking, but in addition to that, how it's going to affect us all. From a provider standpoint, also from the companies as far as trying to get drivers in. So as we look at this, we'll do a little glance back at history about where we've been from. We're also then going to look at how do we minimize the impact of these changes on you. And then we're going to start and look forward to 2018 when the next big change comes. So, as Linda said, back in 2014, we all had to become certified. The theory behind this was that if we all became certified and we were all trained the same way, that it would eliminate doctor shopping and everybody would be on the same page. Now, we all know reality is it probably didn't quite happen that way. You still see some doctor shopping. But overall, we all got trained, we had the same training, we all had to take the same test to become certified. Then, we also then began having to report in to the FMCSA as far as our physicals. So, right now we're allowed 30 days. By end of that 30-day period, we have to enter into the website whether a driver is certified or not certified and how long we give them for a card. And so right now, that gives us some time frame to do that. Now, this month, December 22nd is our next big change as far as DOT. What was interesting is this was just brought about as it's a forms change. But we know how the government works, and as we got into looking at and began having conferences, web conferences with the FMCSA, it was a little bit more than just a forms change. No longer will you be allowed to put your logo on a form. Everybody has to have exactly the same form. You can't modify it. In the past, we were able to put our logo on the top of our forms. Most companies did. It was really, at least you knew where they came from. Now it'll be one form, everybody has to use the same form. Drivers will still receive a medical certificate. At this point, they're still going to be able to have a paper copy handed to them. However, in the past, one of the things that we have done, and all of you guys are familiar with this, is we had limited cards. You had a 30-day, 60-day, or 90-day card. During that time, a lot of times you would issue a short card, if you will, to be able to allow somebody to go out and get the information that you needed to finish their physical. That may be something that you needed to send them for a sleep apnea test, or you needed them to have a stress test, or just needed more information. And so you were allowed to give them a card. They came back in with that information, and you were able to extend that card. The new change is it's no longer extension. They now have to have a new physical anytime, even with a short card. They come back in, they're going to have a new physical. So that's a change in the way things are being done. There is also a new caveat, and that's called a determination pending status. And that is a 45-day window which you don't issue them a card, but you can get information. So, these are the forms. We have printed those out for you. They say sample on them. That's because currently they're not available on the website from FMCSA. They were supposed to be last month. We're still yet to see them. And yet our deadline's December 22nd. We all know how that goes. But one of the things when we look at our form, the interesting thing is there's a lot more information on it that we're going to be dealing with. The history part, I think, is wonderful because it really makes the driver answer the question, such as heart disease. Is it just heart disease, or have you had a heart attack? Have you had a stent? Do you have a bypass? Sometimes the drivers didn't always know how to answer that. This is a much more elaborated physical with a bigger history form. And I think that's going to really help as far as the drivers. They can't give us the excuse that I really didn't know what it was asking. And so we're going to have, I think, more information from the drivers. And then our physical part, really not much changed in that perspective. You will notice that the box in the past for the blood pressure is no longer there. The guidelines are still the same, but it's no longer printed on the form. Now, when we issue a card, we have 5 options. And that page basically says they are either not qualified, they're qualified for 2 years, they're qualified for a short card, such as a 60, 90-day card, or you have determination pending, or you find another reason that you cannot issue them a card. So we basically have 5 categories that we're going to be marking. And again, this new category of determination pending. We also have a separate card now if they're intra-state. So if they're just in the state itself, we have a separate card for them, where in the past you actually would issue them the other card but then mark on there that it was intrastate. We now have a separate card for those people. Now, right now, when we're going to be issuing cards, you're still going to get if you're a CDL holder, you'll still get a medical card issued to you. And then you have to take that to the state, which is currently what drivers have to do. If you're intra-state, then you have to show that to your employer, and you have to have it available if you're stopped by the authorities. Now comes the new fun part, and that is this determination pending. This is part of the biggest change that we're seeing, and that's part of the reason we wanted to talk to everybody. Determination pending is a 45-day window of where if somebody comes in, you can give them a determination pending, and you can allow them up to 45 days to come back with the information that you need. The issue, though, is you're not issuing them a card. And they can still drive if they have a current valid certificate, but you're not issuing them a new card. So that's a little confusing. If somebody comes in and you need to send them out for a sleep study, or you need to send them to get a stress test, they have a 45-day window to get that done. During that time, you've not issued them a card. It is in a pending status. That pending status is reported into FMCSA. So it's kind of a, shall we say, an unusual situation. We're still going to have to work how to do that. But everybody needs to be aware of that. They will be able to continue to operate as long as they have a valid certificate. If they don't have a valid certificate, then the determination pending may not work for them, because otherwise then they'd be shut down. So it's going to make a difference of how much time they have left on their other card. If they don't give us the information within 45 days, it's no longer valid. They have to have a new physical. So what we see is we will continue to issue 1- and 2-year cards. If somebody comes in and they qualify for a medical certificate for 1 or 2 years, then we'll issue it like we've always done. The issue will be is if they need a limited card, what we call a limited card in the past, then they will have to have a new physical when they bring the information into us. It's not just an extension of a card anymore, it's actually a new physical. And then you can only then do a determination pending if they have a valid card where they continue to drive during that time frame. And again, it's only for X amount of time. So the supporting information has to be back into us in that time frame. So that's going to impact our drivers. It's going to impact from a financial standpoint and from a logistics standpoint. One of the things that we're going to try to do over the next 6 months is mitigate that effective new physical price. And so for the first 6 months, we're going to basically, if they come in with a shorter card, we're obviously going to cut that price in half for people to get used to this process. But what do we need to do down the road? And this is really why we all need to discuss this and talk about it. Really the key is really understanding how this is going to affect you, how it's going to affect your drivers, and how do we need to make it so it is as simple as possible and we get drivers understanding it. And one of the things that has been recommended is you need to start your recertification process about 2 months before it's due. During that time then, that would give drivers that full benefit of a determination pending status, that 45-day status. You really need to be thinking ahead of, okay, you've got a driver due in June, let's back up a couple months, and they're going to need to come in early so that if you need to have a determination pending status, you've got a 45-day window that they can get us the information, versus they come in the day their card expires. You can't do that. But you still can't give them the full 1 or 2 year. So then what you're going to do is give them a limited card, or a limited time frame, but when they come back in, it's a new physical. So they have to start over again as far as the paperwork and go through the physical. So you really need to think about maximizing that 45 days. You need to allow drivers to continue to drive through that time period, because that's the whole bottom line. And 3, try to eliminate the cost that you would occur by a short card. So how do we do it? Well, drivers need to be educated. You need to be educated as the employers to really basically be on top of this as far as what do your drivers need. If they've had any heart disease, if they've had stents, if they've had a heart attack, anything like that, they have to have a stress test. When? Every 2 years. This should be, everybody should know this. If you've had a stent, if you've had a heart attack, if you've had a cardiovascular problem, you're going to have a stress test every 2 years. Those people who have sleep apnea, they're going to have either a printout, or they're going to have to be able to bring their card in so that we can verify their compliance. That is one of the things that is absolutely required, is if they have sleep apnea and they're on CPAP, they have to show compliance. And the compliance is 70% of the time greater than 4 hours, correct? Everybody aware of that, right? All right. So part of this is really understanding what our drivers are going to need on a regular basis when they come in for their physicals, and if you will, coaching them. We're going to be giving them the information so that they know when they come back in what's expected every time. But we also know that a lot of times they don't do that. And so I think it's going to be very important for you to also emphasize that with the drivers, so that when they do come in, they know what's expected. They know what to have with them. You know, it's like, oh, I haven't had my stress test in 3 years. Well, that's not good enough. It has to be every 2 years. And so really the key is going to be the education between all of us, not just the providers, but also among you as the employer with the drivers to make sure that they have the correct information when they come in. Now, let's look to the future. We know that in 2018 things will even get more interesting for us with FMCA. The medical examiner's certificate will become electronic. So in 2018 we actually do not have to issue them a card anymore, but we do have to put it into the computer within 24 hours of seeing them by the end of the next day, and then automatically the feds are going to download it to the states. That's a good thing, because then the driver will no longer have to take it in to the local DMV to show that they have one. So that will be a good thing, is the transfer of information, and FMCA is working with the states so that that happens within 24 hours. So that process is, by the time they come in on a Monday morning for a physical, we have the information in no later than Tuesday, and by Wednesday it should be into the state. So that will be a good thing. Now, paper copies can be given to non-CDL holders, so our intrastate people, and if a company really desires to have a paper copy, we can still do that. But as far as FMCA is concerned, everything will be electronic. The biggest thing for us is going to be having to report it in. Now we have 30 days to report a DOT. 2018, it will have to be done by the end of the next day. It's not business day, by the end of the next day. So Friday afternoon, we will have to make sure that it's entered in before we leave for the day. So that's going to be a change. But again, the positive with that is it will get to FMCA quicker and then into the states quicker. So then that'll help the drivers. However, if then the driver is not qualified, what's really interesting is, because it's being entered in very quickly into the system, then you have to tell them you're no longer qualified, because let's say they had a stroke, or they've had some injury or something, they've had some medical issue that they are no longer qualified for. At that point, you tell them what's going on, that they're no longer qualified. If they even have a valid certificate, at that point, once you put it into the federal system, once we enter that information, then it will automatically disqualify them from their previous one. And that gets notified to the state too. So once they're disqualified, they become disqualified, and even if they have a valid certificate, it's no longer valid. And so there's going to be a lot more check system in the FMCA system in 2018. So then the person then would have to come back to somebody and go through the whole physical again to become medically qualified. So those are some major changes that we're going to be seeing this year in December, and then in the next few years. Now, what questions do we have? How is this going to affect you? Anybody have any questions?
Just to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
If I come to you, you say I got 2 weeks left on my card. You decide I need a sleep test.
Right.
You can't. 45-day pending thing. Instead, you give me like a 90-day card to make sure I get in compliance versus the pending card, right?
Correct.
And but then I have to take a brand new physical.
If you do the 90-day card,
Right.
then you would have to have a new physical at that point. At the end of that 90 days, when you show compliance and you got your sleep study and all that done, then you would have to have a new physical.
And the pending card, you just update the...
I just update it. But it would only be good for those 2 weeks if you have only 2 weeks left.
Right.
Now, the question was, if somebody only has 2 weeks left on their card, they come in, then how do we interact with the determination pending status versus giving them a shorter card? And really the key, and that was a question that the last webinar that we all listened to, that was a big issue of how do we deal with that? And that is correct. If you can get it done within the 2 weeks, you could do a determination pending. But if you really can't get it done during that time, and you need a 60 or 90-day card to do that, then you're going to have a new physical at that time. Yes?
Is that a decision you're going to let us make, or are we going to make that decision, say, given the 90-day, or are we going to say, let's have a pending?
Well, you know, you have it, the driver will have the choice if they don't have any time left on their card, and if you want to do a determination pending, then that would put them basically not driving for that time period. But you could still, I mean, you could do it either way, and that is going to be, that's why we're talking about this, because you have to think about that.
They don't need to wait until 2 weeks, they need to come in 2 months ahead of time.
Well, at least 45 days to 60 days ahead of time so that they could utilize that determination pending status to have time to do that so you don't get hit with a second physical. Yeah, it is going to affect us, and it's going to affect the bottom line on everybody.
How did they determine a 45 days? Because, you know, we have seen in our past, let's pick blood pressure. The guy comes in, you say he got a blood pressure problem, he gets sent to another doctor if he can get in within the next week or two. That could be 2 weeks. The process starts and the doctor starts him on medication. That can take possibly up to 2 weeks before the medication takes. Now you're almost 30 days in. So how was the determination of 45 days? How did they come up with 45 days as a number?
Okay, the question is, how was the 45-day determination made? That's a really good question. And it's after lots of discussion with FMCSA, I don't think anybody knows except for them. It was an arbitrary number. Yeah, it was kind of out of the air, and we'll go from there. And that's, in a case like that, especially if we're talking about like blood pressure, and you know, if somebody has already gone to the doc, they're working with you, they're trying to get on medication, that's the good thing is, I think we're going to actually be able to have probably some leeway as far as, okay, if they come back in during that 45 days, if they're working with you, can you then go ahead and issue them a card for a period of time? Now, you may be able to give them at least 6 months or something. I can't tell you exactly, but you know, that comes back to one of the things that we've always tried to do is if the driver's working with us and they are really trying, then we try very hard to, if you will, bend over backwards to make sure we get people driving. It's the ones who come in that aren't working with you that are basically, no, I'm not going to do it. Okay, then we're the hard-nosed guys and say, no, okay, you can't drive. So I think in a case like that, if they come in and they're on meds and they're working with their doc, now you've got some leeway, you've got somebody who's really trying to work with you. Yes, sir.
If they start the process 2 months earlier and they do everything that they need, get a new certificate for 2 years, basically we're turning a 2-year certification into 1 year and 10 months, just in case something comes up that they need that 45-day window, right?
That's correct. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat that. There's no way to dance around it. That is correct. And that means we're turning a 1-year card into a 10-month card.
Right.
The other option is to make sure that that driver has absolutely everything they need when they come in so that they don't need the determination pending.
Because we're not going to extend, if they come in 2 months early and everything's fine, they're not getting one for 26 months, it'll still be 24 months.
That is correct.
So
Okay. And that really was everybody's biggest concern with the last webinar that we were part of, is that came up multiple times. You know, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that is very black and white exactly what FMCA is made as their rule. So that's part of the reason that we, both providers and employers, have to work together of how do we educate these drivers so that they have the absolute, all the information that is needed for their physical, so that they don't get stuck in the middle. More questions? Everybody banging their head yet?
Since you went to them, I know you attend the meetings and you're involved in the meetings with the feds. Did they give you a good reason? Did they give you a good reason why they chose to pick a new physical on the back end? Was there any discussion what the reason was for a new physical versus letting you finish the physical that he already started?
Basically, we got a lot of pushback from FMCA on that, because that was everybody's question of, this is the way we've done it. You know, we've been doing it this way for a long period of time. You know, people come in, they have a 60-day or 90-day card, and you just extend it out for the year or whatever they needed. That was the biggest pushback from them of, that doesn't matter anymore. At this point, you have to have a new physical. And so that's, I think, part of why we were very frustrated with that too, because it completely changes the way we do stuff. And we know it's going to frustrate you guys too. And so that's why we decided the best thing to do is us all to get together and talk about it, so that you understand what we're faced with, and maybe we can try to work very hard together so that these drivers hopefully will have their information, so that we don't have to have as many shorter cards, because it's going to financially impact everybody. And besides that, it's a lot more work for us. I mean, it's a lot more volume for us if we're going to have to repeat physicals all the time.
And this is what the form's going to look like when they finally make them available to the examiners, correct?
That is theoretically correct, that is what the form is going to look like.
Is there a plan B in case on December 22nd the forms are still not available to the examiners?
Probably not.
My suspicion is that they may land up getting them out very close to that, which means we probably will not have the ability to electronically put them in our systems and then be able to use it. We'll probably have to just print them out and to have paper copies.
So, some of these states have forms different from, like California has its own form,
Correct?
but now everybody will be on this form.
That is correct. The question really is, I mean, we all know California has their own form at this point. As of December 22nd, everybody has the same form. There is no differentiation. Basically, California can't have their own form. We can't have our own form. So everybody will have exactly the same thing. And as of this morning, it is still not, the official form is not available. So,
Are there any changes to the card itself, the medical certification card itself?
well, as we looked at the cards there in front of you, there is a little bit difference because it has different categories, and really the main addition is the determination pending that's on the card.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's pretty much the same than what it's been in the past. It's just now we have that new category that's there for us. And you will notice that with that determination pending, underneath that, it then shows that you have 45 days, and then it also shows what happens when the person comes back in. You then have to sign it and date the date they bring their information back in, and then you issue the card. And in addition to the card, then we're basically entering it into the website for FMCA the day that, or the time frame that we issued it to begin with, a determination pending, and then we have to re-enter back in when they come back in. Yes?
So while I'd love to send every driver to OccuMed, that doesn't happen for us. So if I have a driver who goes to a clinic and they're not using the proper form, what is the recourse for that?
Then you need to notify that clinic immediately that they are not using the proper form, because that is a federal guideline. I mean, that's the rule as of December 22nd. I would suggest also probably notifying FMCA if you find a clinic not using it, because we're all in this together as far as we all have to do the same thing.
Chances are they're not on the National Registry, that clinic.
Again, you know, what's interesting, you know, he pointed out they're probably not on the National Registry. At this point, anybody doing a physical should be on the National Registry. But we did hear when a physician called in, had said that they had not been putting their information into the computer since 2014, and everybody was like, what? Because that's just part of it. As becoming nationally registered, that was part of the deal, is you have to put the information into the National Registry. I don't know, is there that many out there now that are doing them? Because we will get calls from inspection stations from DOT that will call and verify our certificates every once in a while. They'll call and verify them. Any other thoughts? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming today and appreciate everybody's business. And as we go forward, you know, if you have complaints or thoughts about this, you know, don't hesitate to call me. Thank you all.